If you're an HR professional who works hard to fill roles within your company, keep employees engaged, and build company culture, welcome to America Back to Work, where dreams only work if we do. We'll share wide-ranging issues surrounding pre-employment background screening, HR topics such as recruiting, hiring, labor trends, and company culture, as well as broader HR-influenced business topics such as customer experience, service level excellence, and protecting what matters through best practices in prevention, protection, and corporate security. America Back to Work is brought to you by S2 Verify. Here's your host, Arnette Heintze.
Welcome to America Back to Work, brought to you by S2 Verify, where our purpose is to help you hire with confidence and manage insider risk. I'm your host, Arnette Heintze. Thank you for joining. Today, our guest is Priscilla Guasso. Priscilla is the founder of Latinas Rising Up in HR. That's a community of purpose-driven women elevating each other in the human resources profession. She is an Amazon best-selling author of a series that showcases Latinas making their mark on HR. Priscilla is also an HR leader with deep experience in talent management, development, diversity, and leadership. Priscilla, thank you so much for joining me today. And, to start our conversation off, I'd love to hear about your journey, your professional career, and what got you, focused on HR matters.
Well, thank you, Arnette, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you and share a little bit of my story today. A little bit of my background is I never meant to go into HR. When I first started in HR over 17 years ago, my actual goal, or what I thought was my purpose in life, was to be an event planner at that time. I worked in hospitality. That's how I started off coming out of college, and followed my passions of creating events and going into like the corporate event space. But after doing that and helping with our events for our employees, that's where it really sparked my interest. I didn't know that so much about human resources, what that career could even bring. Someone within the team said, "Hey, Priscilla, with your Spanish background and just your want and need to serve others, I think you'd be really great in HR." And so I made the pivot from catering into human resources, and I never looked back.
Oh, fabulous. Fabulous. Well, I think it's wonderful that you're helping Latinas in the HR field because, without a voice, without a sense of help, it can be challenging. And I know probably in your career, you've had challenges. Can you share some of those challenges with us and how you came to overcome those?
Sure, happy to. So throughout my career, I've hit all facets of the human resources employee life cycle, as we call it, right? I've been in recruiting, in benefits, total rewards, compensation, employee relations, you name it, diversity, I've been in it. But what I will say is right now as a nation, right, when we look at the population of just Latinos of just what our workforce looks like, right, it's 18% of US are Hispanics, right? And however, my challenge has been, as I moved up in my career, there was less and less representation of Latinos and Latinas amongst leadership level, right? When we're talking about executive level, C-suite, people that would one day aspire to emulate one day, right? I have wonderful, wonderful allies that really paved the way for me throughout my career. But I will say that it wasn't until I saw someone that really looked like me, spoke like me, had dark hair like me, had mannerisms like me, and just could relate to my own story, that I realized that there was such a gap. Because honestly, I didn't, when I moved through my career, it was all about me serving others, me serving our employee population, right? And not until I took a pause and realized, wait a second, what is going on here? How is it that I'm not seeing more individuals like me? I cannot be the only one. That I refuse to believe. So there is where the change and that shift started happening. And honestly, I think it also became because of the time of just where I was in my life. I had been in my career for over 12 years, 13 years. And I had a sense of confidence of knowing my craft within HR. And then realizing I can use my voice for good, right? And bringing others along. And what does that look like? And so that started my journey of where I'm at today.
Oh, that's fabulous. So over the course of the last 17 years, what do you find today that keeps you invigorated and excited about the opportunities here and in HR, and especially the focus that you're bringing to the field?
Yeah. What I really love seeing is that we're moving away from policies, right? And really creating this black and white structure of what companies used to think human resources did. And really now moving into more of the talent development, succession planning, promotion, really trying to focus on how are we truly developing our coworkers, right? How are our employees? What does that look like? And I think with what happened with the pandemic as well, it created a space where we started blending. For a long time, just in corporate America, it was leave everything at home, right, and move forward and work within the company. But we're realizing more and more right after the pandemic that everything blends, and we are learning what our boundaries are and what that looks like. And for me, that's exciting because I think a lot of folks in many different communities have left a lot of who they are at home, and companies can reap so many rewards and benefits when folks bring that other side of themselves, especially when we're looking to diversify, not just in a company, but also our customer base too, right? To relate to all different customers that we serve. So for me with an HR, that's exciting because we're really tying more into the business now too, and leveraging our employee base to help us have that like differentiating factor.
Well, it sounds like you've created a wonderful organization in Latinas Rising in HR. So tell us about that. Tell us about the organization, your mission, your purpose, and what got you focused on starting this.
I tell folks that the power of having a mentor and a sponsor in your life is far beyond none in the sense of just how powerful and how much it can change your life. I've been in HR for many years and I continue to be. And when I took a pause to take care of my health, there came a point where I went, all right, I really need to make sure Priscilla is okay, mentally, physically, emotionally, because HR is hard, especially when you're working in employee relations and you're working on a number of employee relations cases. And I took a pause, and I remember a really close mentor sponsor of mine. He goes, Priscilla, if you could do anything right now, what would you do? And I had two individuals tell me that. And the fact of, I'd love to give back. I'd love to see more people like me or from my background in this space, or at least have that visibility. I refuse to believe that I'm one in a million. I've met so many individuals that are amazing that I'm going, there has to be others like us. And so in 2020, when I took that pause, and I was very privileged and grateful to be able to do that, I wanted to give something back. And that's when I built our book and our community of Latinas Rising Up in HR, with the whole purpose of our mission and our purpose is how do we share our keys of HR knowledge and success to open doors of unlimited possibilities for Latinas, as well as allies that are right there with us saying, yes, we want to see more 18% of Latinos in leadership roles in HR. And what does that look like? And a lot of times it starts because there's not been an organization like this ever. And that's what blew my mind. Sometimes I think we've been around as a country for so long, but there's different things that we're still learning and growing from. Mm-hmm. And so when I learned that, rather than complain and say things aren't changing, and I surrounded myself around other amazing women, did a call out on LinkedIn, reached out to my network of allies and said, who do you know, right? Who do you know that embodies servant leadership, that has high EQ, that really focuses on culture, that is a brand ambassador, not just for the company, but just who they are. And do they happen to be Latina, right? And I'd love to hear their story. And so that's when I connected with them. And from there, being able to peel back the layers of the onion and not just talk about work, right? Our work accolades and how amazing they are, because they're all very successful in their profession. But who are they as individuals, right? We want to relate to people, especially in the last few years. No talking heads. And I did not want a book that resembled 20 amazing women telling a story of how wonderful they are. No one can relate to that, right? It's just like, okay, that's great. You're on your platform. Fantastic. I wanted us to really dig into what were some of the challenges you had, right? And I went into conversations about my miscarriages. And many people were just like, Priscilla, how did you even talk about that? And I go, I did a lot of healing myself, right? But at the same time, there are conversations and taboos that we don't talk about. And that happened when I was at work. And so how do you navigate that? And it's opened up conversations and really bringing vulnerable opportunities for us to just for myself, for our authors, for young Latinas that are looking up to us, and Latinos that are saying, there's not a lot of men in HR either. What does this look like for me?
Mm-hmm.
And them to relate with one another and share their story, or if anything, educate one another. So it's been wonderful. It's been a lot of learning for me as well, because there's so much diversity, even within Latinos, that many people may not know of, that I'm constantly learning myself.
Oh, fabulous. So, what I think's fascinating is that your colleagues in this industry really responded to you in your outreach, and the fact that you got, 2 series of stories that you're sharing with everybody. Would you mind summarizing maybe some of the key themes that you think our audience would love to hear about? What really surprised you, or other stories that are supporting your efforts?
Happy to. There were some of the themes that I've noticed was just finding a place where they could use their voice. They're very, like I said, all of them are extremely successful in their careers and within the companies that they've worked for. But when we talk about speaking in front of larger audiences, for instance, considering to be a speaker or running a workshop at SHRM, or going and doing some type of workshop within a diversity conference, there was a lot of pause there. No. I'm good. I'm good in my space, right? And really pushing in a good way. I tell everyone, I'm pushing you toward development and to feel a little uncomfortable so you can continue to grow, to build their own brand as subject matter experts within the human resources space, so that we can diversify the voices of leadership that we see in HR. And so seeing that and building the confidence within our community that their voices matter. It's not because they've never been around. We've all been around for many years. It's now time to really speak up, bolden up a little bit more, and just own our craft, right? And really take up that space there, whether it's, again, speaking at a conference, at a training, because again, we know that our network is our net worth, and that's, we have to build that social capital, not just within our companies. And a lot of times what I've learned too within our community is we're so loyal and giving to our companies that we work for. And that's great. It's fabulous. But at the same time, in HR, and this is regardless of the community, right? We will work for others and help others, but then we're not developing our own teams, right? And what are we doing to develop ourselves? So that's what this community has done, is really created a place where I'm constantly trying to motivate our ladies to do new things, or be in new spaces, take up new opportunities, to leverage just the knowledge that they already have that maybe they didn't know that they could do. So there's stories like that. There's stories talking about the resilience that they went through as a young child. One of our authors, her father was deported when she was in college, and she had to take care of her family. She was the head of the household for her family, and what that did for her, right? And not here to say, let's talk about politics and all. It's more of just what were the stories that impacted each one of these ladies to be where they are today. We talk about dreamers, and there's some that are dreamers that are part of the Dream Act, and they go, Priscilla, there's times I'm in rooms where I'm in HR and our teams don't even know that I'm part of this community, right? And just how, again, it's very personal, right? And these are very, very deeply personal stories. There's others that talk about how they overcame, whether it's sexual violence, or there's things like trafficking, and you take a pause because you're going, oh my gosh, I see you as my HR director, right? Or as my VP or my coordinator in HR. I had no idea. And this could be for any community, right? But to see that this resilience of what each woman has overcome on top of what they've gotten to in their careers, it brings a whole nother human element to the conversation.
Yeah. What I'm inspired by is hearing you say that the organization and your book has served as a motivator for your colleagues. And what other impact have you been able to identify other elements of impact that the organization and book has had in the field, in addition to motivation?
Yeah. What I have seen is, again, we've been around only since 2020, right? And we're slowly just trying to find what the qualitative measures are for that, because there aren't many research studies out there that are recent within the last, I'd say, even 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is every author that has been part of us, and I don't attribute just to our community in the book, a lot of this came from their hard work and what they've had to do to get to their careers today. But what I will say is I will say that the book and our community has helped really, again, build that visibility and get their voice out there and really amplify what they're doing. It's different when you're saying it by yourself. And many of these leaders are very, very humble. They're amazing. I'm one of them I'm thinking of. I mean, they're all fantastic, but Nisa, she's a chief HR officer now, and she is one of the kindest souls you will meet, and very, very strong in her HR profession. And she's always there to help others, right? And never saying, hey, let's take the microphone. Let's have you speak on the panel. And she'll do it. I'll just say, I'll do it for you, Priscilla. But then realizing later, whether it's her or others that go, wow, I didn't realize, like even at our summit, we just had our first leadership summit last year in October. And that's another space where we realized there were many young Latinas there that had never met another executive that was Latina in HR. Never. They had never seen it. And she spoke up, she asked a question. And I remember one of our authors who's a senior leader, a senior director, she goes, Priscilla, I'm without words. That wasn't even a thought. And well, unfortunately it is in different cities. That's not the case. And we've all been sparse, right, in different places. So it's exciting to see that they can come here. We have a mentorship program that we just started to help build that pipeline. We also have our scholarship program that all the proceeds of our book, a good portion of it, go to our scholarship for both undergrads and graduate students looking to get like their PHR or SPHR of some sort. So we're just scratching the surface on what that impact is. But I will tell you, there definitely has been impact. And I have so many stories of just notes that I received through Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook saying, Priscilla, I never knew I needed this community because it's not just about my career. It's also bridging what is going on personally in my life. And so that's been I'd say the key indicator for us is keeping that.
Yeah. So if we broaden out the view here and look at other individuals that may be underrepresented from a different culture, what advice would you have for them to make them feel like they're participating in the workforce and a way to get them connected into the HR world? What advice might you offer?
I would say really the strongest thing that has helped me in my career in general has been just, again, who are the people I surround myself with, right? Who's really there as my mentor, my sponsor, my advocate, my cheerleader. And that has been key in my career and in many of the ladies of our careers. If you look at the book and all the advice that they give, each lady that each professional that has done their story has like a rise and reflect section at the end of their chapter where they give little tidbits on how to help your career, right? I would say while our book is with the lens of Latinas in HR, it could help anybody. It really could. I also say there's so many organizations out there. We exist one of the main reasons why we've been able to move so quickly in just 2.5 years is because the founder and the leader behind Black in HR, when I spoke to him, he said, Priscilla, this is what we did. This is how we did it. This is where we're going. They've been around for more than 7 years, I believe. Maybe it's now 10. And he said, run with it, go with it, right? Here's what I've learned and good luck. So one of the things I would say is not to think that your background or your story is something that'll stop you. On the contrary, it's what makes you who you are. And over time, you'll learn to embrace that if you haven't already and leverage it to really define who you are, where you want to go, the impact you want to make, whether it's in HR, which is my hope, right? or if it's somewhere else in the world. At the end of the day, we need more folks like you and others that are creating these spaces to really build visibility and amplify voices.
And it is a constant work in progress. I mean, what advice could you provide to other HR leaders who are wanting to cultivate a culture of inclusion across their team, across their company, I don't think we have done enough in this area, and I think more needs to be accomplished. What suggestions might you offer?
Oh, I've had really great leaders and some not really great leaders, and I'm not going to say who, right? But what I will say is it's really important for us to take a look within our own backyard, within our HR team. It starts there.
Yeah.
I've heard so many stories when I coach different leaders at executive levels and mid levels and say, Priscilla, our HR team's a disaster, right? They say this, but then they're off doing this, or we've heard this and then we hear this, and it's not consistent to the culture or what we're looking for. And so I think a lot of it is, we're not a perfect team, right? We're not here to say, oh, we're perfect. But I will say is we do set the tone, right? We do set the tone of what's happening in an organization, and it starts within your own team. And so for me, that is when I've led teams, it's really important for me to understand and make sure that we all have the same values and the same purpose and the mission, and that it aligns to the company, because then how are other employees going to echo what we're trying to achieve in an organization? And in DEI, it's just the same. I've at one point in my career, I was not, I'd say, very proud of myself at that time as a leader, and I felt and I realized this is not who I want to be. This is not who I am, and that's the beautiful piece of it is you can change. You can make that decision to change and really do a 360 and try to do something different. And I did. And all of us leaders, we fall at some point, right? We have moments. And that's when I realized, I think it's time for me to take a break. I'm not the HR professional I want to be seen as. And maybe I'm also burnt out a little bit too. So that's what I would tell folks. And when it comes to diversity, it's knowing it's a long journey. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
But what are those key factors that we're doing, especially as we start cutting budgets with the uncertainty of the economy and things of that nature? What are we truly trying to achieve, and how is your team going to resemble that and be a part of it? And it's hard because sometimes these initiatives or these projects or these workshops or trainings end up in our plates, right, as HR professionals, when we also need the business to take lead as well. So
that's some great insight, Priscilla. So we're going to wrap up our conversation today. I mean, it's been very insightful. And one of the questions, my last question I'd like to ask you is, as S2 Verify were to conduct a background check on you today, would there be any surprises?
I love that question. There would be surprises in the sense of, I did share earlier that I did fall as a leader at one point, right? It was just a personal thing that I've realized, no, it's not the type of leader I want to be. But what they would find is that if they looked at the full course of my career, right, and who I am inside and outside of work, there's so much power in having such a great community around you to make sure that you're on the right path, right? Even when you fall off, wherever that is, right? And so I would say that's probably what you would find is that she's not perfect, right?
None of us are.
No. And I will gladly share my learnings because that's the whole thing, right? Is we want each other to learn from one another's stories. And that's that continues.
Yeah. So tell our audience where they can keep track of you, how they can get involved with your organization. Where can you lead them to?
Yeah. So you can head to latinasrisingup.hr.com. You'll find our information there is our whole platform. And we're continuing to grow as a virtual platform and making different city visits in different cities throughout the next couple of months. So you might be at a city near you. And find me on LinkedIn as Priscilla Guasso. You can find us as Latinas Rising Up in HR as well. And I'm on all social media as both. So you can find us anywhere.
Oh, great. Priscilla, thank you so much for sharing the story and the impact that your organization is having. For our audience, please tune in next week when we continue our conversation about all things HR. We'll see you then. And it goes without saying, let's get America back to work because dreams only work if we do. Priscilla, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Arnette. Have a great day.
If you want to stay abreast of HR, recruiting, and hiring trends, tips, and tools, make sure you subscribe to America Back to Work. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review.